at 7 p.m. We would like to inform all board member attendees that this meeting is being live streamed and archived for access at any time by our community members on the internet within 24 to 48 hours of the meeting's conclusion. And please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and roll call.
Mrs. Farber.
Here.
Mrs. Junk.
Here.
Mr. Carey. Not here. Dr. Lawler.
Here.
Mrs. Pavlak.
Here.
Mrs. Witt.
Here.
At this point, it appears that Mr. Carey and Mr. Rivas are not here.
You know what, Beth? I see Pedro on there.
You do.
Yeah.
I saw Ryan before.
And Ryan too.
Yeah, I see
Ryan as
Ryan's
well.
box.
All right, with 4 members present and 1 showing up in a minute, we will say that we have a quorum. Would anyone like to move something from consent to new business? All right, seeing none, we'll move to the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
In a second? Perfect, and a roll call.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlak.
Aye.
Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Mrs. Farber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. We'll move on to board and superintendent salutes. Dr. Layden?
Yes. Yeah, thank you. As you know, over the fall, back as we started the school year, we would typically have a back to school new teacher introduction. But this year with COVID-19 and the restrictions, we parsed it out over a series of board meetings. And tonight, Mrs. Maris is here, and I will turn it over to her. And she's going to go ahead with a slideshow and introduce our new Kaneland High School faculty members.
Wonderful, thank you. We are thrilled to have an exciting, awesome group at our high school this year. So that you know, because of the size of our staff, we have never been able to come together as a complete staff this school year. All of our faculty meetings have needed to be Zoom. And so from the very beginning, we knew that we needed to come up with some way for our staff to get to know each other virtually as well. So what we're going to share with you this evening is a PowerPoint presentation that we did for all of our staff at the beginning of the school year. So the first one that we have up is Ms. Jessica Barnes, and she is with our English department. The department chair has shared that Jessica is a wonderful addition to the English department and has jumped right in working with 3 levels of our fully remote students. Jessica quickly became a go-to person for Canvas and for Zoom. She's an active participant in the KLC and is a strong collaborator in converting our activities and our assignments into electronic friendly versions. We're fortunate to have her on our team. Next up, we have Jessica Budsman, and she is with our math department. Jessica joined our team this school year after we had begun working for the semester and only 2 days before students were to attend. Jessica's done a terrific job acclimating in our unique circumstances. She's tackled 3 preps, standard-based grading, a brand new online curriculum, and hybrid learning. Next, we have one of our 2 new special ed teachers, Christine Carson. Chris has been an amazing addition to our department. She brings energy and enthusiasm to the classroom. She's been flexible and adapted to the unique needs of the students this school year. We're grateful for Chris being a part of our team. Jenna Cartwright is one of our new social workers, and Jenna has been a tremendous asset in the student services team. She stepped up to meet the needs of our students and is a vital part of our team. Her kindness and compassion are evident in work, and we're very lucky to have her at KHS. Next, we have Amy Dennis, who is actually on maternity leave at this time. She is with our world language as a Spanish teacher. Amy has been a wonderful addition to the world language department. She has a contagious positive energy about her that makes her a joy to work with. During these difficult teaching times, she does a fabulous job creating engaging lessons for her students while they are in class as well as on their remote days. Kaneland is lucky to have a teacher as talented as Amy. And the second one from our special ed is Emily Godin. Emily has been a wonderful addition to our department. She has challenged herself from day one, taking on multiple subjects, coaching and club sponsor. She's always willing to help out, and we're glad to have Emily at KHS. Jake Inman is our PE teacher. Jake has been busy shuffling between remote health, hope, and PE classes. His energy and enthusiasm will be a huge asset to our department, and we look forward to the day that he is coming back into our building, sharing his ideas with our curriculum. And next we have Jessica Parker, who is our library media specialist. Jessica hit the ground running. She created a library website with resources for all students, remote and hybrid, and staff. She's a positive, out-of-the-box thinker who makes herself and our library very valuable, even during a year like this. The next one is Nayeli Partida, and she is with our science department. Nayeli has been an amazing addition to our department. She comes in ready to work and hit the ground running. She's been a huge asset and continues to share new ideas, especially ones that help us to teach more virtually and with standards as the focus. And our final teacher is Mrs. Pushkala Venkataraman, and she is in our CTE department. She teaches computer science. Pushkala brings an amazing work ethic and can-do attitude during this new COVID teaching environment. She adeptly translates her experience as a computer science adjunct teacher from Wabanzi into the KHS classroom with practical insight and purpose for our students. Students have said that they appreciate how she breaks things down for them in a one-on-one setting. And those are the staff that we've been blessed to have at our building this year. And along with you, I'm just very thankful that they are a part of our team and have just really made a very positive impact, as you can hear, in all of our departments, especially during a year like this. So thanks for giving us a chance to share them with you.
Thank you, Jill. Let's, even though it's virtually, but let's give them a round of applause and welcome them to high school, even though it's months later, but welcome. Thank you, Jill, and thank you for taking the time to put that together for not only your staff, but also the board and the community. And it is interesting to hear, as you shared, that because of COVID-19 and even in phase 4, with the restrictions of 50, you've not had the chance at all this year to have your whole staff together yet. It's just an interesting dynamic because usually we do it on a monthly basis. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. And now with also kind of a truncated, smaller version of what we would typically see at a board meeting, I'm glad that Mr. Rollman could join us tonight and share a little bit with us on our, as Mrs. Patterman did from Harder 2 weeks ago. Mr. Rollman, the athletic director at Kaneland High School, will share a little bit about our fall athletics and activities. So welcome, Mr. Rollman.
Thank you very much, Dr. Layden and school board members. I appreciate this very much. Typically, we have our coaches and our athletes here, and we ask them to recap their seasons and share their highlights with you. They have done so in written form, and I will do my best to put those forward for you. We'll start with boys cross country. In July, they were able to have a small sliver of normalcy with their cross country camp. And for the first time in 32 years, the team was coming back as defending state champions. What Coach Clary says they are most proud of is the way that the boys handled the adversity of losing so many great traditions this past season in their regular and postseason due to COVID. The safety guidelines that were put in place kept our program running strong, however, and ultimately championship character that was demonstrated throughout this historic fall season. Team results and highlights included varsity dual meet of 12-0 that ties a school record for undefeated season. And our fresh soft team had a dual record of 7-1. This is the first time since 2002 that we ran a full dual meet schedule. Because of COVID restrictions, we didn't have the usual weekend invitationals and large gatherings. Fortunately, however, we were able to hold some post-season, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. In addition to tying the school record for a perfect dual meet season, they achieved the following and final portion of their campaign. They were first place at the Interstate 8 conference meet at Sycamore High School for both the varsity and for the fresh soft boys teams. They were first place at the regional that we were lucky to host, And we appreciate once again, all the volunteers that help make that happen. The IHSA loves to come to Kaneland for cross country, and it's because we put on a good show, and that has to do with all our volunteers. Second place at sectional this year out of 18 schools, we narrowly were defeated by Crystal Lake Central, one of the top 3 teams in 2A all season long. This would have been the 22nd time since 1986 that this team has advanced to the state finals. Some individual highlights include 6 all-conference runners: Isaiah Dahl, Nolan Allen, Parker Malone, Logan Cruz, Aaron Lodwig, and Christian Phillips. Individual champions in varsity conference meet was Isaiah Dahl. The individual conference champion in fresh soft was Bradley Babka. Individual champion in open at the conference meet was Chris Fountain. Our 3rd place at regional was Isaiah Dahl, and 7th place at the sectional, again, was Isaiah Dahl. The last thing that Mr. Clary wanted me to share was that they do greatly appreciate the school board, as well as Mr. Payton in Buildings and Grounds, and all the parents that were able to help put on a safe and constructive season. Although different, it was very successful in their eyes, and they're very appreciative of everything that they were able to obtain. Moving on to girls tennis, I would be remiss if I didn't start by saying we are going to miss Mr. Tim Larson. He's been our coach for 20 years and will be stepping down at the end of this school year as our girls varsity tennis coach. He included that they had, of course, a challenging season with COVID, but they are more than thankful that they were able to get a season in. Very appreciative of the school board and the Kane County Health Department for helping that happen. The seniors were very nervous, of course, that they would miss their senior season, and because of all of things that were done, they were able to have that season. So a little bit about their season in girls varsity tennis. They tied for 2nd in the conference tournament. They literally missed tying first by 1 point. They won 2nd place in the sectional tournament at St. Francis. With a 3-time All-State player, Piper Shefferman, out of the lineup with an injury for an entire regular season, the rest of the girls stepped up in brave fashion. Many of them were playing in positions that they normally would not play in. Junior Evie Taylor played Piper's #1 singles role beautifully and held the spot with a 9-5 record. Piper then returned for the postseason, and the team finished with a flurry of matches won. This year, we had 5 all-conference girls tennis players: Piper Shefferman, Evie Taylor, Anel Dominguez, Mia Bergman, and Jenna Lynn. First place at conference tournament was Piper Shefferman at the #1 singles spot. First place at the conference tournament in #3 doubles was Mia Bergen and Jenna Lynn. And second place at the conference tournament was Evie Taylor and Anel Dominguez, #1 doubles. They didn't win first place, but they took out the #1 seeded team in Morris in getting there. At the sectional, we had a sectional champion in Piper Shefferman. She defeated Danielle Nedovich from Bennett Academy, who came in with an 18-0 record. We also had and are fortunate to have 3 all-state players from girls tennis: Evie Taylor and Anel Dominguez as doubles, and Piper Shefferman. That makes Piper the only KHS tennis player ever to win 4 all-state awards during her high school career. Moving on to girls cross-country season. Their season dual and triangular varsity record was 8-2, while the JV went 3-1. They were the varsity Interstate 8 conference champions, just as the boys were. The junior varsity I-8 conference got 2nd place. Varsity All-8 conference runners from the girls cross-country team this year included Olivia Franklin, Mackenzie Egert, Aubrey Brose, Rose Dahl, Caroline Nozick, Lindsay Andre. Kaneland was the IHSA 2A in the 2A regional that we also hosted, was 2nd place, and they were 8th place at the Lakes 2A sectional. The IHSA 2A state qualifiers, had we had a state meet this year, would have been Olivia Franklin, the 3rd time in 4 years she was the state qualifier. Rose Dahl and Lindsay Andre would also have made the state meet. Moving on to boys golf. Mr. Meyer, Coach Meyer, says we are extremely fortunate to have had competitive golf in 2020. Our golfers did certainly make the most of every match and every tournament. Very proud of this young group of men. Despite all the tournament cancellations and COVID restrictions, our players lifted each other up all season with positive attitudes. They represented Kaneland High School with sportsmanship and class. Here are some of their accomplishments. In team results, in dual match, their dual match record was 11-1, and their conference match record was a perfect 7-0. Season highlights for boys golf: 3 consecutive 9-hole matches under 150, including a new school record of 144. First place at the Marmion Invite, first place at the DeKalb Invite, first place at conference with a score of 298. They were first place at the regional and first place at the sectional. This is the first sectional championship in boys golf history. Some individual highlights included 4 all-conference golfers: Josh Peel, Cody Ganson, Ryan Milton, and Lucas Peel. First place at conference tournament was Josh Peel. First place at the regional was Cody Ganson and Ryan Milton. They actually tied with a score of 73. Third place at sectional was Cody Ganson. 5th place at sectional was Josh Peel. And 10th place at sectional was Lucas Peel. And last but not least, thanks to the school board last year, we added 3 new sports, and girls golf was one of them. This school year, Kaneland had its inaugural girls golf season. On the day of tryouts were held, 10 girls showed up eager to play golf, including 4 girls who played last year for us. Each girl was ready to play whether or not they had just held the club for the first time or had been playing for a few months or years. They came with a positive attitude and ready to learn the game and improve it. All 10 girls made the team and the season began. At the front of it was Coach Joe Hughes, who helped make practices happen and scheduled matches for us. He helped make the season possible and did a fantastic job coaching this year, improving our kids' games and teach them to the newcomers. Throughout the season, though, positively reigned as teammates lifted each other up on good and bad days. This was a very strong and close-knit group, as was the boys' golf team. They continued to encourage one another. The team won 8 matches out of the 10 that they played this year. They took first and third place at 2 tournaments they went to and won the Interstate 8 conference in their first year. A historic moment for Kaneland, as it was the first title for girls golf in their inaugural season. The conference title was an amazing feat, says Coach Hughes. It showed the progress of the hardworking team and the practice that made them improve. The inaugural Kaneland girls golf team will go down in history at Kaneland being not only the first team, but the girls golf conference title team Kaneland had. The Kaneland girls golf has a bright future ahead of itself through more improvement and new players. I would also add that the girls golf team had the most participants in the entire conference. And just within the last week, Mr. John Hannon from Buildings and Grounds put up several conference plaques, regional and sectional plaques down our hallway. So I'm very proud to report to you that despite all of the adversity and all of the restrictions that were in place, our coaches and our athletes, along with our families, have once again done an outstanding job, and it's a pleasure to be a part of that group. Thank you, Dr. Layden.
Wow, so proud.
Yeah, thank you for that update. It's so nice to hear some of those again. All right. So the next on the agenda, I don't think, does you have anything else, Dr. Layden?
No.
No.
I do want to share that under the superintendent report, Mr. Rollman is going to hang around because under the superintendent and board report, he'll give us an update on high school athletics and activities as we transfer from tier to tier and what the IDPH and the IHSA are saying and thinking right now. So we'll get that update and after we finish J1.
Perfect. So next on the agenda is public comment, and there is none tonight. So we will move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of the following action items: the approval of accounts payable and payroll January 2021, approval of minutes of the January 11th, 2021 regular meeting, approval of resignations, terminations, and employment of staff, approval of motions not to release closed session minutes from the July through December 2020, approval of administration to begin preparation of 2021-22 budget, and the informational item, the employee position report. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
In a second?
Second.
And a roll call.
Mr. Carey,
Aye.
Dr. Lawler,
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlak,
Aye.
Mr. Rivas,
Aye.
Mrs. Barber,
Aye.
Mrs. Witt,
Aye.
and Mrs. Junk.
We have Mrs. Oh, I think you're muted. Did we get Meg? Or maybe you said aye.
Yes.
Oh, I said aye. It came out very late.
I missed you then. All right, motion carries 7-0. So we'll move on to J1, approval of 2021-22 school calendar.
Yes, please know that this, we will be looking for action at the end of this agenda item. And also please know too that as we've talked about with projections and staffing and finances, that this is a schedule or a calendar recommended right now on what we know and what we hope the fall to be. But please know, as we've seen all school year, we've adapted and changed as the circumstances have warranted, and we will also do that too. But for now, our recommendation, as you can see on the calendar itself, I'll just share a few of the highlights from the memo. We do follow the Mid-Valley Special Ed Cooperative, and that one of the bylaws in the Mid-Valley Special Ed Cooperative is for the sending districts, which are primarily the 5 of us, to do their best to adhere to those bylaws. And with St. Charles and Mid-Valley being tied together, they have already approved their calendar for next year, which is also the same as this one, to start our school year on August 11th. But again, that said, it may shift into the future. And also, please know that the sending districts to Mid-Valley have had some conversation as this is trending closer to the beginning of August next year. We will be having some serious dialogue about maybe moving it back 1 week, and maybe more to the true middle of August rather than the beginning of August, knowing there may be some semester implications and balancing of semesters. But please know that with the earlier start, it is a consideration that we'll have for the following school year. The other thing we really try to look closely at is trying to assure that we have very few 3-day weeks. And in the upcoming calendar that's proposed that you have in front of you, August 9th through the 3rd, which is our first week of school, and then November 1st through the 5th, with our parent-teacher conferences, are our only 2 3-day weeks, 3-day student attendant weeks, other than the breaks and Thanksgiving and the winter break and spring break. We know that the more 3-day weeks, families tend to tack an extra day on for holidays before or afterwards, for family vacations and holidays. So we've done our best to minimize that to 2 weeks. And the other reminder too that you'll see, or that you won't see on the schedule or the calendar, is the fact that we don't have half days. With our geography and the way our transportation works, many of our surrounding districts, based on their geography, will have half days. We've just never incorporated half days into our schedule because they're problematic with our geography. The next thing, we again, with this proposed calendar, will conclude the first semester at the winter break, which works out well and balances the days. And again, that started 3 years ago for the finals discussion. And so this year with Mid-Valley, again, starting on the 11th, we will follow that and make that recommendation. But as we potentially in future years have conversations about a later start, we might have to talk about what the balanced semester looks like and when that might conclude. So for this year, proposed year 21-22, it still fits at the end of the semester, but in subsequent years, it might be a little different. And then also the last thing, it seems interesting that right now you still have to go through the State Board of Education and the Regional Office of Education to have formal e-learning plans approved, even though most districts have been doing them to some degree or another since last March. We still have to go through that process. So know that Dr. Adkins, myself, and KEA leadership is starting some of those discussions for next year for the e-learning days, for emergency days, snow days, other technicalities that may happen. And so again, that will be a conversation we'll have. And I think everybody will feel more confident going into next school year having those conversations, because I believe as most surrounding districts, we've become experts and become well-versed in remote learning, and families and teachers are well-versed in that too. So, and again, we have no half days in our district. With that, after reviewing the calendar and hearing a little bit about it, wanted to see if you had any questions. Well,
Any
thank
questions?
you.
Yeah, go ahead. It didn't sound like it.
No, I was going to say thank you, and just know as we learn more going into the spring and in the summer, we will bring back any updates as needed to the school board and communicate to our families accordingly, because we know a lot of people wait for this to make certain family plans for the summer. So we will provide those updates as soon as possible if anything is recommended for change.
How does it work with Mid Valley? You said St. Charles and Mid Valley have already decided that this is the way the schedule is going to go. So how do we supersede them if we want to change something?
It's a good question. And Burlington School District has also already approved this calendar too, based on Mid Valley. So St. Charles and Mid Valley, they are kind of like Fox Valley and Kaneland are tied together. So Fox Valley follows what we do. Mid Valley follows what St. Charles does. And given this calendar with this start date, St. Charles did a 2-year schedule the last time they did theirs, whereas we come annually. So the superintendents are going to have some conversation prior to any of the districts making their decisions for 22, 23 to see if we do need to roll that back a little bit. So we do have some conversations all together. St. Charles just did theirs a 2-year schedule and does theirs a little earlier. So it would be through superintendent conversations, Ryan.
Okay, because I've never been a fan of moving the school district up and starting earlier and earlier. I realize there's reasons for it, but I think I don't see the benefits that, other than Mid Valley, which we're kind of forced into. I don't see the benefits of it. So I would definitely be in favor of moving the school date back towards the beginning or end of August, rather.
Okay, thank you. And that has kind of crept forward. I think it was maybe the 16th, then it goes to the 13th, and then down to the 11th. So each year it creeps forward by a day or two, or at least it has the last couple of years for our consideration.
Isn't the benefit that we are able to then end the semester at the holiday break?
Yes, that has been, that was, that and following the guidelines and bylaws of Mid Valley, that was one of the pushes 3 years ago when we first moved to finishing it before the semester, because that's what our surrounding districts had done. But now I think one of them is going to move back a week and won't be with the Mid Valley, following the Mid Valley bylaws. Again, no indictment on any of them. They all have to make their decisions, but one of the districts, I believe, is going to do a different timeline.
And if I remember right, part of the reason was to balance the semester lengths, but we're not balanced this year, if I remember correctly. We've got an extra week on one side or the other.
Yeah, they're off by, and even this one is off by a couple of days, but with 5 essentials and ACT and AP testing and other series of standardized tests in the fall, we have those extra days built in. So they're pretty close to only being off 1 or 2 with all of the spring testing dates that we have.
Well, then should we just join the other district and do it now?
Not yet. I'm still good with this one to follow our bylaws. I would rather be in compliance with our bylaws, and also as we have some conversations with the high school, it would be another year till we are comfortable moving it back. But thank you for asking.
Any other discussion? All right, is there a motion that the Board of Education approve the 2021-22 school calendar as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
And a roll call?
Dr. Lawler,
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlak,
Aye.
Mr. Rivas,
Aye.
Mrs. Sparber,
Aye.
Mrs. Witt,
Aye.
Mr. Carey,
Aye.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. We'll move on to the Superintendent Board Report.
Thank you, President Sparber. I do want to start with Mr. Rollman, since he is here, and That way he can provide an update on where we are with athletics and activities and the state of the state, so to speak. But before Mr. Rollman shares, I did want to share that, and I'll provide some more updates after he is done under the same report, that it does appear that the IDPH will be moving Region 8, which is DuPage and Kane counties, to Tier 1 mitigation tomorrow. So some of the conversation that Mr. Rollman is going to share with us is kind of balanced on what would happen in Tier 2 mitigation and then Tier 1 mitigation. And so questions that you have or any feedback that you have, just remember he's kind of balancing between both of those, and they're not set in stone, but we do believe that based on the progress, tomorrow we will move to Tier 1 mitigation. So with that, Mr. Rollman, I'll turn it over to you and can share a little bit about what's going on with our conference in the state and our activities in athletics.
Absolutely. Thank you once again. First of all, I want to publicly thank all of our staff, our coaches, and our activity sponsors. They've done a tremendous job since March 13th, in my opinion, of keeping our kids engaged in all kinds of ways. And they too, as Mrs. Maris pointed out, we have not been able to have an all staff meeting where we're all together, which is typically how we start the year. And obviously a lot of the information has to go out via written communication, via email and so forth. And so I just think they've done a tremendous job of continuing to get that information out to their student athletes and those families. And obviously things are changing constantly. And we'll talk about this week and how it's going to change again. So, but I just wanted to acknowledge them publicly because I think they've done a tremendous job. And I think we're fortunate to have those individuals in both the clubs and activities as well as the coaching staffs. I'm very pleased to report to you and to the community that we have now 48 student organizations at Kaneland High School, and 42 of them in some manner have been able to meet with their students this year. There are 6 because of the nature of the group, just wasn't feasible. But 42 of those groups have been meeting since the fall with their students, oftentimes virtually, but still keeping those students engaged, and those kids are certainly responding to that. As far as athletics go, as you know, we've had lots and lots of changes. The IHSA threw in contact days in the fall, and nearly all of our coaches, not quite all, but nearly all of our coaches participated in that and gave our kids extra opportunities in the fall. And the state has now given us contact days for all of our programs that are not in season for the remainder of the year. So essentially what that means is that our coaches will be able to continue, if we have the space at the time, to engage our kids, not just in strength and conditioning and supervising, but actually continuing to teach the skills that are necessary for the game. So even if they end up with shortened seasons, they'll still be able to continue to teach to the student athletes. Right now, as Dr. Layden said, we are in Tier 2, which means those things that have opened up are in smaller groups. And it all depends on if you are a low risk sport, a moderate risk sport, or a higher risk sport. So technically basketball is in season. The girls did begin with some conditioning and a little bit of practice today. But again, because we're in Tier 2, we're in groups of 10 or less. If we move to Tier 1 tomorrow, that number then expands to 25 or less. We really need to get to that phase 4, which is the next level. We are the only school in our conference currently right now that is in the Tier 2 stage. Everybody else moved to phase 4 today. There is a meeting this coming Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. with the IHSA Board of Directors. It is anticipated at that meeting that they will then produce for us revised schedules, season start dates and season end dates for all the remaining sports. What that looks like is anybody's guess, but we're hearing 6 to 8 week seasons for the remaining fall and winter sports, so that the spring sports who lost their whole seasons last year would get a full or near full season. But again, this is still to be determined. We are to get communication from the IHSA on Wednesday afternoon. And shortly after that, we are meeting as IADs to discuss what is brought up, because the following day, the State ADs Association, along with the IHSA, will meet to clarify all of what comes out of the Board of Directors meeting. I will then meet with all of our coaches on Thursday evening, and the I8ADs, we planned today in our meeting that we will meet on Friday, and we will reschedule all of the remaining games for our conference on Friday, starting, of course, with the seasons that are in season now. We are able to have bowling, girls and boys bowling right now. We have those teams. They started practice at the end of last week, and cheer and dance are also gearing up because those are all considered low-risk sports. A couple other things that I wanted to share with you that we've talked about. It's very likely that we will not be able to have a lot of spectators, if any spectators, as we move forward for indoor sports. But all of us in the conference do have the ability to stream the varsity games from our main gymnasiums using the National Federation of High School Sports Network. It's called the Pixelot camera. We've had it for some time. Mr. Goff put it in before he went to DeKalb. So we have that. And so that parents can watch games. If we end up not being able to have spectators or have limited spectators, you'll still be able to see those. For the lower level sports, we have also started to look at Facebook Live and being able to show those sports too, if that's possible. Another piece that I wanted to share with the school board and with the community is that the Interstate 8 Conference, which is made of course, 8 teams, has partnered with the Kishwaukee River Conference, which has 6 teams, for a new football partnership. And I must stress it's a partnership. It is not a new conference. But what it does for both conferences is it shores up our ability to have good competition on the football field. And then it also, as you know, football often drives the breakup and the makeups of conferences. And so that's, I think, assures that both conferences will stay together. We're going to have basically a small school and a big school division in each of those, and then you'd play one crossover game. It also still allows us to have 2 non-conference games for the first 2 weeks of the season, which has been traditionally weeks 1 and 2, of course. And this schedule would then start this coming fall. And we just got the schedule out this afternoon, so I'll be sharing that with Dr. Layden, who I'm sure will share it with you as well. So there are a couple of things I do want to mention. So as we talk about moving back into sports, it is not, even if we go to tier 2 and we can go to groups of 25, there are still restrictions and limitations. Social distancing continues to be a big part of it. When you're not practicing or scrimmaging with each other, depending on where we are in the tiers and the risk level of your sport. We will continue to mask and wear masks during practices as necessary by the IHSA and the IDPH. We also will be using locker rooms for kids to change if they are at school. If they're coming to school because they were on a remote day for a practice, they are going to be coming dressed for practice, and therefore we won't be using the locker rooms to the extent we normally would. And those are some of the kind of things that we're putting in place to make sure that we continue to limit the kids' interactions in various places. And then, of course, we'll continue to do the cleaning and so forth in those areas that we have not been using, like locker rooms. So any questions that I can answer? There's a lot going on, and it's certainly going to change after Wednesday. Mr. Carey?
I know Illinois is one of only, I think, 2 states in the country that aren't playing basketball. Are you hearing any good reason as to why, or is it just we're being told and that's it?
I was on a call with the Kane County Health Department, and there was some updates on this too, and that is what it is. It's the our government leaders taking the stance that they've had and they've had all year. So I don't know if there's any other anecdotal information that they haven't shared, but it's the conservative approach that they've had all year. So I think we are one of only 3 or 4 that have not opened up sooner for athletics.
Yeah,
Which is
Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Is there a concern that with the new strains coming, we keep hearing that the next few weeks could really blow up? It seems a little premature to start things up and then maybe just have to shut it all down again. Is there any fear of that or discussion about that?
Part of well, I'll go ahead first, David, from the King County Health Department, then you can share if you have something. As we talked with the health department today, one of the things that they are doing, because I did note that I think today I read that there were like 6 or 7 cases in Chicago. And so the B117, I think it's called, variant is in our state. I think right now they have said that they believe it is more contagious, but they also believe that the vaccine will counteract that one also to what they know. They don't know for sure, but what they know now. And so as we've done for this year, Mrs. Witt, and we considered this, as we followed the guidance all along, this is what the guidance allows. And so not that we have to follow it, but at this point, until we learn something different in our weekly updates or till we have more information directly, I feel comfortable recommending and following that guidance. And if we do learn something different, we'll always have a conversation to be conservative and be on the safe side.
Yeah, I agree. I despite what I may feel personally, I think it wouldn't be right to say, oh, let's follow the guidelines, but only when they match what I think they should be, So if they say it's okay, I'm going to trust that and we'll go with it until we can't. So, thank you.
I do think maybe, I'm sorry if I don't.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
That maybe you have better and better local information, local meaning Kaneland, than we knew we would when we started. So I don't know if that factors in as well, but just I guess to think still that you're tracking and just even specifically to Kaneland, and if numbers skew, you could go more conservative than the recommendation or whatever that might be.
Right, and that is one of the things that Mr. Roman and I will have more conversation on, because as we've reported out regularly, what our local numbers are, our building numbers, building close contacting, and then days, and then positivity rates, we've kept that close. And we'll do the same thing with the students through athletics. So as you're seeing probably nationwide with college and athletic sports, as cases are identified, sports are shut down for a period of time, or programs are shut down for a period of time. And so as we monitor our internal data, even if the outside guidance says we can participate, if there are cases or something inside that is a concern, we can always act outside of that for sure.
So I can't keep up with all the tiers and levels and phases. So are we if we go to the next level tomorrow, are we allowed to play games against other schools, or is it 2 steps away?
Mr. Rowland, that one's all you.
It is, Mr. Ryan, you are exactly right. It's incredibly difficult to keep track of all of that. And I've usually got to have a flow chart in front of me while we're talking about it. It is a very good question, because it also actually depends on what sport you're playing and what risk level that sport is. So for our low risk sports, we can actually start bowling next week. We can start games as long as we have to wait until they give us the official start dates on Wednesday. We can start having those games. When we talk about the higher risk sports like a basketball, we can't play. We can scrimmage once we get to phase 4, but we have to wait until we get to that point before we can even scrimmage. Like right now, basketball would be drills, shooting, those kinds of things, but they can't play 5-on-5 yet. So it's all depending on what risk level each sport is.
And the other important note too is the high risk sports and low risk sports, those aren't something that we determine locally at Kaneland. Those have also come out through the state. So it's consistent across the state. May not be as open as other states, but it's consistent across the state what are high risk, low risk, and medium risk sports.
So I'm assuming wrestling is just off the table?
Actually, wrestling per the IHSA, is still moved to not start even till April. If we get down a couple of moves here, if we get down to phase 4, then they can actually start working on moves and things like that with each other. But right now, all they can do is conditioning, weightlifting. To Mrs. Witt, to your question earlier, though, there are some things that we talk about as coaches, or I talk to our coaches about regularly as we are moving in the right direction. We also continually say it would only take a few days in the wrong direction for us to turn around and do that. So, and that's really important that we continue to share that with our student athletes as we do begin to open up some things that, yes, you're still supposed to be wearing a mask, and it's not okay if you're not wearing a mask, and social distancing during your water breaks and those things, because you're right, we could turn around, even without the new strain, we could turn around and go back in the wrong direction if we're not careful.
Thank you.
Mr. Rollman, has there been any discussion of like modifying sporting activities, right? So I read through the CDC and they were saying that it's possible to hold a sport if you modify it, right? So like maybe instead of doing, like home run derbies for baseball as opposed to actually playing the full game or something like that, right? Is there any discussion of that going on?
There actually is. Excellent question. Basketball is a perfect example that once we actually can play basketball, they will be taking additional breaks, not just the timeouts that the teams call in the quarters, but they'll take additional, what they're calling mask breaks. And then there are some parameters within those games too that, how many where your kids are sitting on the sideline and all of those things. So they're already thinking about doing some of those things. Yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Seems like great timing for you to be here, Mr. Rollman. Or maybe tomorrow would have been better. I don't know, but
well,
very informative.
I will continue to share the updates with Dr. Layden, who I know shares them with you on Fridays. And we'll just keep our fingers crossed and we'll keep moving forward. Like we said earlier, we've redone the schedules, I don't know, 4 or 5 times, but it is what we have to do. So we'll continue to do that. And as you heard from some of what our coaches wrote earlier, any activities that we can provide for our kids, they are being, they're extremely grateful. And I think that's enough motivation for all of us to keep moving. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rollman. A couple other things that I had, and I know Dr. Fuchs has too. Part of what Mr. Rollman shared was some of the information from the IDPH and the Kane County Health Department and current updated information. So as I had my weekly call today, a couple things I want to share. There is a plan for, and we'll share this later on with staff also. So staff, if they're watching now, will be hearing this for the first time also. But for administration and staff, it does look like as part of phase 1B, educators in Kane County, the health department is trying to come up with a week, the week of February 8th through the 12th, with various times, sites, and locations for the Moderna shot to be administered for those electing the vaccine. So it's still in preliminary phase. We're not sure yet the times or the locations. We know that they're going to try to do a south, a central, and then a north Kane County locations, multiple sites on multiple days to try to meet the multiple schedules for staff members to be able to be accessible, again, to get the vaccine if they're willing to. And so they're going to try to do multiple days. They're going to try to do, or actually all 5 days that week at multiple sites with some local sites, and then also with larger mass vaccine sites. And again, they're trying to balance that with their information that they're getting as far as how many vaccines they're going to have available. Our community, our Kaneland and Kane County community has done a nice job communicating. The health department's been extremely helpful. We understand that their hands have been tied trying to balance a lot of the decision making. And so we have a number of nurses, hopefully district-wide and also county-wide that are going to help volunteer. Other district leaders that can help volunteer by taking tickets and lining people up. So I think it will be hopefully an incredibly successful week of getting those that are willing to be vaccinated or interested and willing to be vaccinated during that week. Also,
is that going to need to change the school day at all?
That is a great question, and we met for about an hour after school today. Dr. Fuchs, Dr. Atkins, and I preliminarily, just as I learned the information late this afternoon, we're not sure yet. We're not sure what times and locations are going to be. We're hoping to learn the times and the locations maybe by the end of this week to have a week to plan and prepare, because there may be some sub-instances. There may be, as the superintendents were collaborating, might be some instances in which it would be appropriate to do 1 or 2 remote days during those days to allow staff to be available from noon or all day for those, again, that are willing to do so. So it's a great question. President Sparber, like much of this year, we'll adapt as we learn the new information. And once we know what the schedule is and how we'll be able to try to make our staff as accessible as often as possible for that week, we will be sure we communicate that.
And that would include like bus drivers and everybody, right? Yeah.
Yes. That would be all staff, and there should be, I think I've shared it before, but it's EM track. I think it stands for Emergency Management Tracking, for people to sign up, and then it tells them where their slot is, where they go, and what they need to bring with them. So while we haven't experienced it yet, that's what we've been told, and we are seeing other counties and other areas that are receiving some of their shots. And so I do want to share that our county is doing everything that we can. Some of the surrounding counties and some surrounding areas either have maybe more shots accessible, they have maybe fewer people in 1A, fewer people in 1B, or they have just fewer hospitals, fewer first responders, and they could move quicker. So there's not a state priority to get DuPage before Will or Will before Kendall County or Kane. They are truly going county by county and trying to balance those and be fair across the board. So we are, as we learn the information, we are communicating it forward. Any questions about that? And then the other plan that they would do is the 4 weeks out or 3 weeks out based on the Moderna vaccine. They would also then revisit that timeline, see what was successful, what wasn't, and then either do a similar plan or shift the plan accordingly for those that have to follow up in a timely manner for the round 2 of the vaccine. Again, I'll provide more updates. If you have any questions or things come to mind, by all means, reach out and contact me. Also want to give a couple other brief updates. Next Tuesday, the Kaneland Foundation meets again. We have a meeting in February and then a meeting in April or May to end the school year. So that's the Kaneland Foundation meeting next week. Also wanted to let you know that the 5 essentials, we just learned late Friday that the 5 essentials survey that is required by the state and used for the state to give back to schools for our own internal information and as part of the school report card that you hear annually. I got shots on my mind. That assessment will be required again this year, and we do have the timeline from February to April. So we'll be shortly sharing that with our parents, because if you'll recall, our parents, we need a 20% completion rate to get the data, and then students and staff will have some time set aside during the day on one of our remote days for them to get that completed also. And again, that last year was a little disheartening because we did have the requisite number of students, staff, and parents complete the survey, but due to a number of districts statewide with the coronavirus, they didn't get it done, so we didn't get our test or our survey results from last year. So is unfortunate, but again, we'll market it, we'll advertise it, and hopefully we'll get our percentages and our populations done so we can learn from that information. Last thing I wanted to share, last Thursday, CAC met with the intent. There are 2 things required that we need to get is handbook feedback, and another one is part of the discipline committee. So we did talk with CAC a little bit about the handbook, kind of a different year this year because the handbook being so different, tried to differentiate what they're learning and seeing and hearing firsthand as parents in a COVID year that may not apply, and things that part of remote learning or maybe technology that we could take away that we were able to note. Then the other topic we talked about too was summer school. The board will get an extensive update in February on our first semester data, on our grades, our student achievement, how we're doing. And as we compile some of that feedback and then a parent survey, we will come back with more of a definitive plan for summer school, what the plan will be, course offerings, remediation, acceleration, all of those things. And so CAC does meet again after our next meeting, but the next CAC meeting is on February 18th, and we'll look to bounce some other ideas off of them. So those are the topics I had under the superintendent and board report. President Sparber.
Dr. Fuchs.
Thank you. Good evening. This week on Wednesday, the KHS Master Facility Plan Steering Committee will meet. A few of us have been working in the background with the architects to finalize some initial drafts of what a facility plan might entail. And so we are looking forward to bringing that to the full steering committee for feedback and to see where we need to go from there. Once the committee is completed with their work, we are planning to bring the information to the full Board of Education. I hope that we can do this in February, but if not, then definitely maybe by March or April. It just depends on how many revisions will be needed once the full steering committee gathers after this week on Wednesday. The meeting will be virtual, and Mr. Carey and Mr. Rivas are members of that committee. Next week on Thursday, February 4th, the FAC will meet virtually, and if any of the board members would like to attend, please let me know and I'll send you the link and or the agenda packet. So those are my two announcements for tonight. Thank you.
Great. Anything from the board? I think one thing I'll just say, I think last meeting we talked about kind of our meeting structure. Given the shifting environment we're in, I'm planning on just reaching out to the board members again, essentially in 2 weeks, unless someone wants me to do something different. Hearing none, we'll say that's unanimous. Okay, any topics for future agendas?
I think this is probably going to happen anyway, but we have a new president and administration, and there have been some rescinding of executive orders. Some of them, I think, affect Title IX, things like that, or could. And I guess at some point, as you know them, I'm just asking that you share with us what the changes might be and how things will look moving forward.
Good thoughts.
We will, thank you.
Any other topics for future agendas? All right, and no public comments. Those were due to Dr. Layden at 3 o'clock and he received none. So we do have executive session tonight. Tonight we'll like to go in executive session for Illinois School Code 122C1. We do not expect any action after closed session. So therefore, after the vote to go into closed session, the recording of tonight's meeting will be concluded. Is there a motion to go into executive session for Illinois Code 122C1?
So moved.
So moved.
All right, maybe
Second.
Aaron, Ryan
Ryan.
seconds. Yep, and a roll call.
Mrs. Pavlak. Mrs. Pavlak. I'll come back. Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Mrs. Barber.
Aye.
Mrs.
Aye.
Witt.
Aye.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
And Mrs. Pavlak.
Aye. Sorry about that.
No problem. Motion carries 7-0.